our former senator and good friend, Joe Lieberman?
Joe Lieberman was my friend for more than 50 years. On the world and national stages, he helped to define and frame an era in our history. Most strikingly about Joe Lieberman is that he was a fighter. He stood up for everyday Americans and people of Connecticut, leaving a legacy of working and fighting for environmental values, civil rights and liberties, consumers, and other great causes of our time. And he was a person of deep love for his family and faith. And really, what I most remember about Joe Lieberman is not only that he was a role model and a leader who sought to bridge gaps and bring people together, but he was supremely a kind man who could disagree without being disagreeable, as the saying goes, always listening and trying to bridge gaps and bring people together.
He was a blue-blood Democrat. He was a Democrat all the way. Supported the people, but he also found solutions and found ways to work with people he not necessarily agreed with, but always worked for the better of the people he served, whether it was on a state level, federal level.
He formed some very unlikely partnerships with people who disagreed with him deeply, but found common cause on behalf of our national security and defense, on behalf of the environment, consumers. And he was a role model in bridging those gaps, never adhering blindly to an ideology, ferociously independent and fierce as an advocate. He was never bound by the strictures of party, but he remained true to the values of the Democratic Party.
And people remember him as a senator, certainly because he served for so long and won his vice presidential run. But really, he was a man from the state of Connecticut. Talk about that a little bit. He represented it. He was a senator here. He was an attorney. I believe he was attorney general for the state. You know, he really did serve the state as well as eventually the country.
I followed him in a number of roles in our state legislature, the state senate, as attorney general for the state, and then as a United States senator. And there is no question that Joe Lieberman always had Connecticut in his heart. He never stopped working for the people of Connecticut and caring about them. And no matter how far and high he went, the people of Connecticut were always in his heart. And on the Senate floor, I can remember his talking endlessly about moments in Connecticut, people of Connecticut, causes that mattered to Connecticut. And for him, politics was truly local, and so was his own public interest.
And a family man. He really was a family man. Many times I remember standing in the driveway, Friday afternoons, as soon as sunset hit, Mrs. Lieberman would say, okay, dinner time is now. He had to spend time with his family, and that was his religious beliefs, his family beliefs were also very strong, very important to the man.
Family and faith, they came first. He remained true to them. No matter how high or far he went, the Sabbath was always to be kept, the family was always to be loved and respected, and those kinds of values mattered to him more than anything.
What would you say is his greatest accomplishment at this time, either here in the state of Connecticut or at the U.S. Senate?
He's going to be remembered as a national candidate by many people. He'll be remembered as the first person of Jewish faith to be on a national ticket. He broke those boundaries. And he showed something not only about himself, but also about the country, that it too was willing to be tolerant and move forward. But I think that of all the accomplishments, his love of family, his faith, his service to the people of Connecticut, his caring about them, no single piece of legislation, no single lawsuit, but simply his constant and consistent work for the people of Connecticut.
How can this ability to work across the aisle be an example for political figureheads moving forward to really get things done?
Working with him in the United States Senate, as a colleague, as well as following him as Attorney General, what I saw was his ferocious independence, but also his ability to work across the aisle. And that was always very important to me, and I think remains important to many who worked with him. There is still a place for bipartisanship. In fact, it is a necessary ingredient in our political process. He showed that it's necessary and also that it is possible. No matter how deep our divisions, no matter how troubling our dysfunction, Joe Lieberman will always be a model of bipartisanship, sometimes to the frustration of people in his own party, but always, in his view, for the national interest.
How would you say he was a role model towards you? How would you say he was a role model for you? What lessons did you learn from him that you have taken into your career?
As a role model, first of all, dedication to the public interest and authenticity, faith in the American experiment, the American dream. He was a role model in his work ethic, his faith, not just religious faith, but his faith in America. He was an old-fashioned patriot, and he believed strongly in not just our national defense, but our values. It's not just the example of our power, it's the power of our example. And he was a role model in believing in the American dream and American values, and in hard work, never giving up, never giving up.
I think somebody like him with his ideals could be used by many of the people in Congress today with everything that's going on in Ukraine, in Gaza, all over the country, in the Red Sea, Iran is starting to look dicey again, the Southwest Asia again. We need more people like Joe Lieberman.
I talked to him many times about the need for America to be strong in defending our values and deterring our enemies and adversaries, because Vladimir Putin will not stop with Ukraine if he's allowed to win there, and we will have our troops on the ground bleeding and dying as the Ukrainians are doing right now. And his encouragement to me to stand strong for Ukraine was a deeply and moving impression for me. And that's one of the reasons why I've fought so hard for aid to Ukraine. Joe Lieberman was a role model for us in Connecticut, but really for many in Congress, because he stood strong against aggression like Vladimir Putin, like Iran or North Korea, and showed that we have a role to play in the world, and that the American example of freedom and democracy is extraordinarily powerful and indispensable.
Anything else? Thank you very much, Senator. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.